Well, hello there, and welcome to the Business of Becoming podcast. I am your host, Lori Kennedy, and this is episode 28. This conversation was a wowzer. I am so grateful to Melissa for bringing her truth, for being super vulnerable, for being really open, and for just holding space for us to have this really important conversation about what building your business is really like as a health and wellness professional, because there is this level of perfectionism. I don't know where it came from, but we all have this notion that everything has to be perfect. We have to be perfect. We have to portray perfectionism. And for anyone who's growing a business, you know that that's just not true. We get into a lot of different topics, how to include self-care practices, what Melissa calls her self-care practice, how she's been able to navigate her relationship with her partner, and so much more. I really am so grateful to her for really bringing the truth and really holding space for this conversation. And if you don't know Melissa Ramos, she is the founder of Sexy Food Therapy and the creator of the Sexy Lady Balls program and community. She's also a nutritionist with a background in Chinese medicine. And in addition to helping hundreds of women heal their hormones through the Sexy Lady Balls program and with private consultations, she's a health expert on CTV's The Social, an official health writer for the Huffington Post, and a TEDx speaker. And she's often affectionately known as the hormone and poop whisperer. I know you're going to love this conversation. Everything that we talk about can be found over at the show notes at lorikennedyinc.com/28. So without further ado, welcome Melissa to the show. Hello, Melissa, and welcome to the Business of Becoming podcast.
Hey, Mama.
I am so excited to talk to you. And for those of you, I feel like we should do a disclaimer. You and I chat very frequently behind the scenes. So this is going to be more of a conversational style podcast. And I had originally sent Melissa over some notes and last minute decided to change the conversation to something that I know feels much more authentic to both of us. And so if you're looking for more of behind the scenes of how Melissa lives and breathes in her everyday life, this is something to definitely tune into. So for those people that don't know who you are, why don't we just start with a little bit of background?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a nutritionist. I have a background in Chinese medicine. And when I say I have a background in Chinese medicine, it's because I did go study, become an acupuncturist. But since going completely online, I don't pay into the board anymore. So I can't call myself an acupuncturist. You can't needle people over Skype. So that's just kind of how that works. But so I run a hormone membership group called Sexy Lady Balls. My business is called Sexy Food Therapy. Everything in the business is kitschy. It's kind of talks to people about hormones and digestion in a way that's entertaining and fun. And that hormone membership site, Sexy Lady Balls, brings in women everything from, horrible PMS right through to like menopause. Like we essentially work with quite a few different women. And we have like some other programs that launch periodically through the year, from hormone weight loss, and some other projects that we're just actively working on behind the scenes, which is exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for those of you that don't know, Melissa does these amazing videos. You're super funny, and it's true. You add, like, I've watched a lot of them, and it's the kind of content that you can binge watch because you're funny and you're engaging, and you very much bring your own personality to those videos. And I know those videos have gotten you, have been sort of that starting off point to get you some of the bigger things, the bigger opportunities that you do in your career. Is that correct?
Oh, for sure. And, those videos, like, people come to me and go, oh, I love your videos. And I go, you don't understand. Like, when I started those videos, like, thank God there's a delete button on YouTube, because they were horrendous. Like, I started those with like a handy cam flip camera that I got like from my ex-boyfriend. And I actually was still using his like really shitty tripod. Like, it was like one of the best things that came out of that relationship was the tripod.
That's sad.
I know, right? It's such a flimsy tripod, but like, they were really bad videos. Like, and so I always say that to people, because if you're starting in video and you just like are looking at all these people going, you know, oh, I wish I was this, like we all started out from somewhere. It's just the more you do it, like playing a musical instrument, the better you get. And yeah, I mean, like I've been approached by, it was when I was approached by CBC, and I was on the Stephen and Chris show, and that show was still running. That's how they found me, was through my videos. The Social on CTV, which I've been on there for 6 seasons now, which is great. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of opportunities, media opportunities from those videos, because people share them. But again, it took time. And even now, like I've been doing them for so long, it's great, but I'm still trying to expand, like now where do I go with it? It's just this constant evolution.
So let's talk about that, because that's a really good segue, this constant evolution. So I know for myself, as much as I play an extrovert on the internet, I am an introvert. I know
You're
that
totally an introvert.
I am an introvert. I know that you are an introvert. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey for me to really, I feel like I'm so grateful that I decided to become an entrepreneur, because it really taught me who I am. And it gave me this platform to become more of who I want to be.
Yeah.
And I think having a traditional job in sort of what I like to call the muggle world, I don't know if I would have had the awarenesses and the freedom to talk about or learn about myself in such a way that I have through this journey.
Yeah.
So do you feel like your evolution, I know you've also been doing this for a really long time. Neither of us are newbies in this space. And, you know, take us through sort of the evolution of how you now are able to talk about like your spirituality, your self-care practices, your boundaries. I'm going to assume that that wasn't the case at the beginning.
Well, you know, in the beginning, when I started Sexy Food Therapy, I started it was like this silly little blog I was writing. It was sexyfoodtherapy.blogspot.com. You know, it didn't even have its own domain, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I, at that time, was writing because I was newly single, and I was writing about these really bad dating stories that I had and how I would emotionally eat the right way. And I was writing it from a place where I was living with 3 other women that I called the estrogen den. And it was just this really funny kind of blog that melded Sex in the City meets therapeutic food. That was the premise of it in the very beginning. And it was just a blog. And I opened up this Facebook fan page, and it started out with like 2 people. And it soon, all of a sudden, people started to read my stuff. Now, I don't write about that stuff anymore, but I've always, I would like to say that I certainly have been very transparent in who I am from the very beginning. I think it's a part of why people dig some of my stuff, because I just have this, like, I don't want to say that I have, am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, go ahead. I was waiting for you to say it. No.
Okay. Yeah. So I hate the whole term of like, I give 0 fucks, because I'm just selective over the fucks I give, is the way that I look at it. So I am very transparent. I have been since the very beginning. But what I've been talking about has definitely evolved. Now it's like hormones and digestion, which has been through my own personal journey. The spirituality stuff definitely started to come out a bit more. I think that there's been a lot of like, I was always kind of nervous to talk about it previously, because there's just been so much stigma around some of the beliefs that I have held for so long, that I'm like, if I say some of this, are people going to not take me as a credible practitioner? And that was a huge fear that I had. Or are they going to think I'm just batshit crazy? So I just hadn't said anything. And then now all of a sudden it's like this trendy thing to be a witch or to have and hold these beliefs, and everyone has an altar and all this jazz. So it kind of made me feel a little bit more safe to come out with some of those patterns. I've certainly since have severed some, I have severed relationships with, various companies I've worked with, which didn't actually align with my belief patterns, because they may have been very religious and then took it as like, I am worshiping the devil, for example, which is not the case. So that kind of has been coming out a bit more. That evolution has come out. Has it been easy from the beginning? No, it's just, it evolves. And as you said, in business, like if you want to get to know yourself, become an entrepreneur, because it's like being in a relationship with someone who's bipolar. Like one minute you're awesome and everything is great, and then the next minute it's like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you're having an ugly cry moments, doubting your capabilities to do anything. So, but yeah, spirituality has always been something that I've leaned to. Definitely more so because I've become more open about it. And the self-care has been something that has obviously been, has been something I've been talking more about, but only because of the fact that, you kind of grow through it from your own personal experience. Before, just like you, it's like you hustle and hustle and hustle. And you're like one of those people who are like go-getters and this A-type alpha individual, but like you can be an alpha female. Just don't be alpha stupid, but that's what most of us do, is we become alpha stupid and then we burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I definitely had about a year of burnout where I had to sort of go back and address all of the things, not just my hormones, but my boundaries, my relationship, my mindset, my self-care practices. Did you ever have a time where you sort of hit burnout, and how did you come back from that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've gone in and out of burnout a lot. There's never been like a time where it was like, more extreme than others. Maybe there were. Last year was pretty challenging for sure with burnout. And that was really challenging. Like in September, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and that was like what the F. But, it wasn't very surprising because Hashimoto's, like, there's a huge, like, digestive link to that. And I had Norwalk at the top of 2017. So it's like, maybe that was like what pushed the needle over. Overwhelm and all that. Yeah, I think we hear this notion of boundaries so much in the industry, like obviously with Brene Brown and so forth, of like, set your boundaries, say no to people, like assert yourself and do this. And I think that the biggest piece that women are missing is, before you can do any of that, you have to take radical responsibility for where you are and where you fucked up. Because if you don't, you can create all the boundaries you want, but if you're creating boundaries, you could be actually like passing the buck and blame about like, well, this person did this to me and this person did this to me, and that's why I'm setting this boundary. But if you actually don't go, I'm setting this boundary because I allowed myself to be in that position, then it's never actually going to make any sense. It's not going to work. You're just going to still be in that victim state mentality going, I'm setting boundaries, like this big, like B word, but it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had to look at that this year for 2018. 2017 was a cleanup year, and we can get into that because you said that was what you were doing for this year. 2017 for me was a massive, okay, let's go back and fix all of the broken things.
Yeah.
And now that all the broken things are fixed and the machine is running, and I can genuinely now, for the first time ever since starting, take an actual step back. 2018 is really about like, okay, how do I re-establish my boundaries, given that I am the one who got myself into this mess in the first place?
Yeah.
Like what now needs to change? What decisions do I need to make? What do I need to say no to? And I think that's also like super trendy, like, oh, say no, but like actually based on, the way that I want to live my life and like the actual time freedom that I've just now worked a decade to achieve.
Yeah.
How do I take advantage of that?
Yeah.
Right?
Because when you start to get that freedom, you start to get like, okay, well, maybe I'll just work harder, and then you can just put yourself back in that position, right? And that's the thing. It's just taking radical responsibility for where you're at and calling yourself out on your own bullshit is one of the most hardest things to do. And it's even having that relationship with like your friends or your colleagues versus getting resentful and being like, screw it, I'm cutting this person off. It's like, do you actually have like really solid friendships where like I could talk to you and go, hey, listen, like when this happened, like I felt this way, and I'm not saying this because I want to get into a fight with you, but to really open up and talk to people, because that just creates so much more love in those relationships. When you have that open communication with other people and are able to become very vulnerable about how you felt and where you were accountable versus just placing blame on everybody else.
Absolutely. And if you're okay to go there with me right now, how do you have those conversations with your spouse? Because I'm not married anymore, but when I was, this was often an issue that came up for me because I wanted him to feel the self-induced pressure. I wanted him to feel, I don't like using this word, but I don't know the other word, the burden of the achievement in the same way that I felt it. And I didn't understand until very recently that that actually isn't possible because it's my vision. It's my purpose to carry. And so I'm wondering how you handle those kinds of conversations when you're in the thick of it and you need to create boundaries, but you also want that support. Like, has that ever occurred for you?
Oh, it definitely has. I mean, last year, I honestly believe I'm a full supporter of therapy. A lot of people think that like, oh, you only go to therapy when when you're at the end of your rope. It's like, no, like therapy is like prevention for your relationship. Sometimes you need that outside person. My partner and I have gone to therapy, and it was not because like, oh, we were broken. We went to therapy because we actually wanted to speak with somebody to help us understand some of the things and become stronger. Like we've got really big visions of what we want for ourselves, and we want to be able to grow and be strong in those areas. So how have we been able to like have those difficult conversations? The first thing is, again, it goes back to that responsibility. It's like, if I'm having a problem with my spouse about something, then I have to take radical responsibility for what my part was to play in that role, right? Versus being like, he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. Like quite often it's like, the biggest thing I tell women is when you're feeling and you're in that state, instead of asking yourself like, am I overreacting? Because like that's like telling someone to relax. It's you just don't do that. You just ask yourself, am I tired right now? And for the most part, most of us will go, oh God, yeah, like I am effing tired. So if I can say to myself, like, am I tired? Yes. Then the second thing I would say is, and this is like a huge thing, I have to always hammer this in my head, is never trust your thoughts on a tired brain. Never. Because you will tell yourself you're ugly. You will tell yourself that your partner isn't doing enough, that like, you know, he should be this or she should be that. And that's just not necessarily, can you actually trust those thoughts? So if you are going to have a conversation with your partner, number one, ask yourself, how do I want to show up in this conversation? Number two, am I rested enough to actually think that what I actually am in my head, like, is this something I feel in my heart, which is my voice, or is this something that I'm just thinking in my head, which is just noise, right? Like you can never trust your brain. Like your brain and your thoughts are going to tell you all sorts of shit, but like your feeling is something totally different, but you can't actually hear that voice unless you're well rested. And women are statistically proven to be more sleep deprived than ever, because sleep is like one of the most, like, it's free. But yet people are on their devices, even with the glasses, or they're watching like, you know, This Is Us, which is a very good show, by the way. But like, you shouldn't be up till like midnight. So having those tough to have conversations is like, please be well rested. Take responsibility for where you're at. And I always suggest is like, how are you going to show up? And also when you go into it, like, try to think about where your partner is coming from just for a moment. Like just entertain yourself that, you know, your partner actually does love you. And that if you are in a partnership with a man, men are very simple creatures in the fact that like, they're kind of like mechanics. Like, what's the problem? We're going to solve it. And sometimes if you're going to ask or talk to your partner, do you just want them to listen? Because then you have to state that objective. Like, listen, I'm coming to you because I just want you to listen. I don't want you to fix anything. Because men instinctively think, okay, this is the problem. Okay, well, how do we fix it? But how are you going to show up in that? And also ask, you know, tell your partner some of the things that you appreciate about them. Because if you go into it and be like, you know, like, I'm just sick and tired of this and that, and you have no idea where I'm coming from. My business is so busy, blah, 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 blah. The partner's just going to be like, holy shit. And they're just going to retaliate, you know, versus being like actually showing some form of gratitude so that they feel they have a safe space to walk in. Because when they do, that conversation can become more out of response than out of reactivity.
And I love what you said. And it's funny because we have sort of an inside joke that if the entire world could just balance their blood sugar, like we would all be okay. And I would add to that, if the entire world could just balance their blood sugar and get adequate rest, like imagine how much better the world in general would be.
Yeah.
But as you were talking about these suggestions, I can't help but think that a lot of this work is the work that defines a true leader and someone who is just sort of like trying to be successful, because there's no difference, in my opinion, between having those kinds of conversations with your spouse than with your team than with your clients. It's a skill set that we all should want to develop. And it's been my experience, at least that's been the hardest work for me to do, is to be able to identify why those kinds of conversations make me feel so freaking uncomfortable, and then to adopt the skills and the communication for me to actually have them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, you know, as I was listening, I was like, yeah, like these are the skills that we need to really go forth and prosper in our businesses, not only just in our marriages or whatever, friendships, whatever, but just it's sort of like these are the core fundamentals of what we need to instill in ourselves to be successful.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Like how you have to be able to see this. Like if you feel completely burnt out in your business, the chances are your relationship is probably suffering. It very likely is. And I can be a complete testament to that because
likewise,
my husband took a backseat to my business for years. And I actually harbored a tremendous amount of shame and guilt for that for a very long time, because I'm responsible for this. Like, of course he's going to feel like he comes second to my business because, you know, this is all it's been. Like he's seen me at my desk eating out of,
because he did.
Yeah, he did. Like I'm sitting eating out of like an almond butter jar during a lunch, you know, and that's like just happening on the weekend. Like I'm not even feeding myself properly. And he's taken the back seat. So that was a huge point of guilt and shame that I had. But so there has to be, like, balance is bullshit. But at the end of the day, there has to be some give in terms of that responsibility. It's like, what can I adjust right now? Because everyone's busy. Everyone's like, oh, you don't understand. I'm so busy. I can't do all these things. Like, it's easy for you to say. It's like, no, you just got to value that enough to make time for it.
Yes. So let's talk about that, because I also think balance is a myth. I try to prioritize everything. Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the specific things, maybe from like a self-care perspective, or like I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I don't even know where I would be without my therapist. Like, what are some of the ways in which you support yourself to not only be able to take responsibility, but then to make the shifts you need to make so that you can feel good?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, we hear a lot about like routines, morning and evening. A lot of people are trying to get up earlier to do their thing. And they're like, well, I'm waking up and I'm feeling super tired. So I always say, just start off with the evening first. And for me, I have never looked forward to the end of day like I do now. End of day is like my time to just, I value it so much that I look forward to it. Before it'd be like, oh God, I got to shut off my computer and I don't want to because I still want to work, and crap, I forgot to go to the bathroom type thing. Or I forgot to eat. Like it just would be hustling. Right. Now it's like, I have a hard stop at about like 6:30, latest 7. If I'm doing a live stream show, which happens like on Thursdays, I'm like working till 8. But when I am done, all the lights in my apartment actually go like right down dim. And the reason why is because you can't end up producing any melatonin if you've got, which is your sleep hormone. If you've got light everywhere, your brain just thinks like, okay, it's daytime. So you're not giving yourself that rest. So I'm a huge proponent on morning and evening routines, but my evening one is one that I probably cherish the most. Having that downtime and like disconnecting from everything. I'll allow myself like to watch a show, and I have a hard cutoff TV time where I'm like, okay, by 8:30, the TV is like, we're done. Like we're not watching a marathon, you know? So I'll allow myself, okay, well, I'm going to watch an episode of This Is Us. I'll watch an episode of The Bachelor. Don't judge, but it's a bad show and I like to watch it sometimes. So, you know, I'll do that. And then after that, it's like, I'm going to read. I'm going to like do anything that feels good. Because sometimes I just want silence. We get so much energy from phones and laptops and TV, and Lord knows where the moon is at, you know, like when all that stuff is happening and people are like, oh my God, it's the moon made me do it. And oh, I feel so like crazy. That's not the problem. It's just revealing a problem to you. and if you feel overwhelmed and anxious and angry and sad, it's like, well, what do I need to adjust? And so for me, the evening routine's a big one that I love. And I do change it up because sometimes I get bored easily with stuff. Like I really do. Like even with, like, I actually haven't written a book, like gone through that process for multiple reasons. But one of them I'm just like dreading is like, fuck, I got to talk about this book for a year. Like, so boring. But like, same thing with routines. It's like, how do I switch this up so I don't get bored of this? That's a big one, is those routines. And also being able to say no to certain engagements, because I'm not that person, that socialite who goes out on Fridays and Saturdays. Sometimes I get really excited that, woohoo, it's a Friday night and I get to stay home and just read. Like I dig that. But I say no to a lot of obligations with people because it just feels good to sometimes not talk.
Yeah, I totally get that. I said no to a lot of things for 2018 because I just want to stay home, and I know that there's only so much time in the day. Yeah. And I wanted to create space for things in my life that I haven't created space for. And it never occurred to me. It was like, so one of my like energy therapists, she's like, well, if you want to have a boyfriend, like actually look at your schedule and like, is there time for that? Yeah. Like, are you actually leaving time to meet people and to have even texting conversations and phone conversations? And she's like, when are you in your day, are you actually going to have conversations with people between work and the kids and hockey and like, and I was like, oh, good point. There legit actually was no space to bring in anything new into my life, whether it's like a relationship or an opportunity or a new friend or alone time. Like I had my schedule so packed because that's what made me feel good, that, a false sense of like goodness, that I was pissed that these opportunities weren't coming to me, but I actually made sure energetically that there was no space or time for them.
And a lot of those are distractions too, right? Like I believe we're all addicted, and it just depends on what your poison was. Like, and some people's addictions are work. Some people's addictions are alcohol. Women are statistically shown to binge drink. I was one of them. Like I just committed to sobriety, like at least from the time of this recording, almost 4 to 5 months ago, and that was also because I needed to create that space for myself, because it was distracting. It was distracting me from so many things that would end up robbing me in the long term of all my energy. Same thing with you. It's like, you can pack your schedule, but like, what are you distracting yourself from? Yeah. Like to avoid certain things, because we don't want to feel certain things. It's just sometimes it's really uncomfortable because then we got to face shit, and that's no fun. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that that's really important, is discerning like, where is the time? Like, what kind of time do I want? Or the relationships that I want, whether it's with a spouse, whether it's with friendships, relationship I have with myself. If your relationship with your partner is suffering quite often, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, but for myself, when my relationship with my partner wasn't as great as I would have wanted to, and I have a great relationship with him, it's just a big part of it was my relationship with myself was shit. I had no time for him, let alone myself at all.
Yeah. Absolutely. One of the things that I saw, I can't remember if it was an Insta story or a Facebook Live, it doesn't matter. But one of the things that really sticks in my head, so thank you for this, is you said that that your self-care meter is way off course when you'd rather sit in front of the TV and binge on, like, let's say Netflix, and actually give yourself self-care time. Yeah. You've gone way past, because you need to just numb out versus actually put the effort into doing the self-care thing. And that really struck me because I often feel that way. Yeah. And I'm trying really hard to create time in my schedule so that I don't get to that point. Yeah. But that was really an aha moment for me.
Well, a big part of it is like, sometimes I have to try to like reword self-care to people, that it's not necessarily self-care so much as it is about self-parenting. Because like you'll sit there and be like, well, I know I shouldn't be watching this, but oh God, just one more episode on Netflix. And it's so addictive, but it's not even just the blue light. It's that electromagnetic frequency that we're already vibing at this energetic level, like being in front of a laptop and working really hard. And so like attracts like homeopathy, right? So you get off of the laptop and your body almost instinctively wants more of that vibration because you've been operating at that the whole day. So of course you're going to want to sit down and just and be glued to a TV because that's what your energy is pulling you at. The second that I remember at one point, I'm like, I'm going to take a bath. And then my subconscious, which rules over your conscious brain, is like, no, I don't want to do it. And it was interesting because as I'm in the bathtub, which I don't take baths all the time, but when I'm in the bath, it was so weird. I remember feeling it was almost like being in fourth gear and then going down to first. It was like that massive shift, which felt very uncomfortable because it's like trying to put you from one frequency to another, which is in essence a bit jolting at times. And that can be a really hard transition, but that self-parenting is crucial. So I always say to people, it's not so much about self-care as it is self-parenting. When you were a kid, did you want to go to bed? No, you want to stay up. Did you want to wake up early? No, you wanted to stay in and sleep in. It's the same thing as being an adult, but like you got to look at that as yourself, almost as a child and go, no, Melissa, you got to go to bed. Like, you got to shut the lights down low. Even if it means I got to throw on some candles, I've got a couple of dim lights, got enough candles so I can read. I'm a ferocious reader. An introvert is just, a part of what introverts love is just books. But yeah, it's a huge part of self-parenting. It's not even so much about manicures, even though I dig them, but yeah, self-parenting for sure.
Yeah. And I think it makes a huge difference too. And what I want to say is, look, like, this is a journey for those of you listening where you're like just starting and you're just hustling for years, 16 hours a day. Like,
oh yeah.
Please, I don't want anyone to feel bad that they're, like, oh my God, I don't take a day off. Like it's hard to take time away because it's genuinely your purpose on this earth is to do this work.
And you feel like you don't have a choice.
Right.
Like that's when you're called so strongly that someone, like I was telling this to my husband the other day when we went out for his birthday, we were coming back home and I said, passion, just like being in a relationship with a person or your business, it's like, there is no other choice. I am meant to be right here. So you will do anything and you won't stop at anything but to do it. So whether that's 16-hour days or whatever, it's all consuming. It's like love.
It's all consuming, but at the same time too, there are certain sacrifices that have to be made 100%. I think that, there's this whole thing now. It's like how to build a 7-figure business without hustling. I don't know how that's possible. Like, I'd love to see the blueprints on that one. I think I'm going to do a whole thing in defense of the hustle because show me someone who got to that level of success that did it on like a 3-hour work day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
But at the same time, what I've learned, at least over the years too, is if I could go back, the only regret that I have is I sacrificed my health.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do the very simple things, sometimes like even just drink water.
Yeah. Right?
That could have made the difference and saved me pain later on down the road.
Yep. Oh, I totally agree. Your health gets sacrificed, especially if you're in the health business. I mean, for you, like you work with people with their businesses in the health niche, but to some degree, you almost go through a level, if you're in this business of health, of imposter syndrome, because You're like, I'm working so hard and my health is totally suffered. And I've like, that's where I'm just like, that's where I have zero fucks, like in my little zero fuck bucket of like what I'm discerning from my fucks. But that's where I'm looking at it going, I'm going to be totally open about this. Like, I'm going to be open about the fact that I've had a cyst that ruptured and, almost killed me because it tore off a piece of my ovary. I'll be honest that I had fibroids. I'll be honest that I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, like that I was a binge drinker. And at some point I looked at it and was like, I think I got a bit of a problem here, because you have to take responsibility. I just happen to be super open about it. And if people want to make judgments, they're going to judge you anyways. So I really don't care, but it can sacrifice your health. And at the end of the day, that's all you've got. It's all you've got. And at some point it clicks. Sometimes you kind of have to, people will say to me, like, when did you end up hitting rock bottom with your health that you're like, made this big change? I feel like I hit that rock bottom so many times that I just got tired of having those bruises.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When I was a nutritionist and I had like a full-time weight loss practice, I definitely felt that, which is why I integrated into like the tagline without giving up wine, chocolate, and popcorn, because I ate popcorn all the time. I drank wine all the time. Like you, I don't drink now, but I am not the typical like organic, non-GMO, holistic-y nutritionist. And I haven't been since the beginning. And I felt like I needed to sort of have a disclaimer around that because, I think it also brought people to me. And I know now too in my business where I sort of say like, hey, guess what? Like I eat fast food sometimes and my kids eat Swiss chalet. And, we like, I can't be that like pretend sort of like health person because it's just not who I am. And it's exhausting, frankly.
Yeah.
To sort of carry that forward. I know a lot of people in the health industry, that's what holds them back is like, they're not quote unquote perfect.
Yeah.
And I know that you owning that and like even showing pictures of your scars and talking about your binge drinking and all of that stuff, I can only assume that it's strengthened the community with your tribe.
Oh, for sure. Like it's definitely strengthened it. The more open you become, you're going to have a lot of people I think you're going to have more people who are going to come to you and go like, yeah, I totally relate to that. Thank you for being so transparent. When I've been very open about spirituality, I've had a variety of mixes. Like I have a lot of people who've responded very positively. The majority of people have. There have been some people who've come and said like, I did take you seriously until this. And like, yeah, I read tarot cards. I'm not somebody who just like, searches on Uncle Google about like, what, the Four of Cups means, for example. Like I actually know how to read them. But I think that, again, because it's all gotten so trendy, but it is one of those things that you're going to have haters whether you're not. And the bigger that you get in the industry, the more those people are going to rear their ugly heads. But with that said, I said this to a colleague who is now just getting bigger and bigger in the industry. And she is starting to get a lot of those haters. And she's like, how do I deal with them? And I said, it's hard and it can be very hurtful, but you have to kind of try to remember that a lot of the times people just want to be heard and they want to be validated. Even if it comes across as the most nastiest comment possible, it's often because they just want to be heard and they want to be validated. So sometimes you just got to kill it with kindness and go, hey, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. I really appreciate it. It's great to be able to have an adult conversation. Like you literally can almost bypass some of the nastiness and just say that. And if they come back at you and they're nasty again, then you don't have to respond to that. Like, or you can ban them if they're on your page, like, which I do all the time because it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen. And at the same time, it's like the people that value that, the people that appreciate that side of you, they're not the ones leaving those comments.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So it's all good. Well, thank you for this conversation. I hope for those of you watching or listening that this was really helpful for you. I know sometimes it's really helpful just to hear people that you admire really just share their own truth. So it helps you to feel not so alone and not so crazy. So thank you for being really open and really honest. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find out more about me at sexyfoodtherapy.com, especially if you're struggling with your hormones and digestion. We talked a lot about self-care, obviously, in this episode. And, a big part of what I talk about is that you can try to fix your hormones as much as you want, but if the lifestyle, like if your lifestyle is shit, none of it's going to work. You're just going to have really expensive urine. It's the truth. So you can find me at sexyfoodtherapy.com. There's multiple ways of working with me, whether it's privately or whether it's through the membership, Sexy Lady Balls. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll link to everything that Melissa mentioned into the show notes, and we will talk to you again soon. Have a good day, everybody.